Good evening and welcome. Thank you to our in person and online communities and our stakeholders for joining us this evening. Tweaks County Board of Education meeting is now called to order. Today is May 18th, 2021, and the time is 6:07 in the evening. May we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting, call session board meeting, May 18th, 2021.
So moved.
Motion's been properly made by Ms. King. May I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been properly seconded by Board Member Blackshear. Is there any discussion? Again, this motion is to approve tonight's agenda for our call session board meeting, May 18th, 2021. If there should be no discussion, are you ready for the question? All in favor? I'll say yes or raise your hand. Any opposes? No opposes. That motion carries unanimously. Our agenda has been accepted, and we will proceed as written if there should be no modifications, Dr. Bullard. Thank you, Dr. Bullard. At this time, we'll have an ethics statement by Ms. Teresa Blackshear.
In accordance with regulations set forth by the Georgia Ethics Commission, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest or interest of such conflict. Does any board member have any known conflicts of interest? Seeing none, we will proceed with the agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Blackshear. At this time, we will enter into our business agenda. Business agenda item A. This is our salary supplement schedule. This is an information item. Mr. James Austin.
Good evening,
Good
Board
evening.
Chair, Vice Chair, Board members, Superintendent Dr. Bullock, constituents of the community in person and virtually. We want to take an opportunity to talk more about the salary schedules and supplements that we presented. We had a very good time with research and understanding the nuances of the market. We wanted to ensure that everything that we did had data tied to it. And some of this information you will see tonight will showcase what that data looks like and how we're able to come up with the salary schedule. But before I go into the presentation, I'd like to tell you who we are. We're generating excellence, one team, one goal, and our mission is to inspire, challenge, and prepare all students to compete globally. So how did we develop the new administrative schedule? Well, first things first, it's research based. And one of the things that we looked at, the first question we looked at, were any prior year supplements reduced? 2 years ago, we know that we was heading to an economic crunch and some of the supplements were reduced for that reason. We considered that in this particular equation. You have in front of you a detailed analysis of position names and salaries that show how that was restored in this particular schedule. Based on our related experience as an administrator in the same or comparable role, so it's not based upon teaching experience. Most of our administrative positions were based upon a teaching scale. This would be solely based upon administrative experience or something comparable. The placement will ensure that all employees' salaries will not decrease. Let me give you an example of this. In the instance that someone was a 15, 16-year person on the teaching schedule, that would make considerably more. Well, if there was a second year administrator on this new scale, they could have made or could make less. But we'll ensure that they are placed in such a position that their salary do not decrease. And they have the opportunity to progress on this scale. So we do take those things in consideration to be fair and equitable. This also allows us to have better budget control. Every year, when this is approved, we'll know what each administrative position will pay. And also for better promotion and retention practices. Employees in-house will know if I want to aspire for this particular role, I have that opportunity to do so, and this is what I could potentially make. So it provides a more transparent process as well. So the administrative schedule and other supplements. On this particular screen, we are listing each position that we approved in the past. It was about 15 the supplements that we actually had as related to administration. And those have been outlined in this particular schedule. Also, again, we use data. The CTA director position does not have data for a small school, only for medium-sized and large-sized schools. So, of course, that data would not be applicable to our situation. So we will maintain the supplement and have cost of living adjustments over time in order to ensure that that supplement does increase. The same with the band director, head varsity football coach, and also the pre-K director. We've ensured that the base amount starts with what it was reduced to, and it ends to where at least it was prior to the reduction, if any reductions were made. So this is an example of some research. So an associate superintendent division head, this data comes from the Metro RESA. And when we're looking at information, this is what we see. So we see that each school system that participates in this particular study, we're able to see what their highest potential pay they're paying in that particular role. Also, it shows us the average of what all the systems that are considered small are paying for their particular position. The way the scale is developed is that we use the highest potential salary to end the scale, and we use our internal historical data to begin the scale. And that's the data point that we've used to develop scales. This is an example. And if you follow along in the pack, this will be the salary studies in the back of the package. Due to how it's on the agenda, we will start back and then we'll work our way back to the front. There's a divider that says salary studies, so you'll be able to follow along from that. So the varsity head football coach, for an example, as you see similar schools and what they're paying, it shows what their base amount is and what's their highest or their top earned amount. We do pretty good in this category, actually. The prior year supplement that was approved before reduction was $9,000, and it's now $7,000. And so we are well in market as it relates to that supplement. We have evidence and data to support that. Same with the high school athletic coordinator. This will be our athletic director, if you will. We look at the data. This position had a supplement of $5,000. As we look at the data, we can clearly see that we outperform most districts in that particular category, and we're still in line to where some of the highest districts pay. So we're able to quantify that as well. And in the comment sections, you can see what type of days they have and other details about the role as well. All right, so that was the administrative schedule. Now, the teaching schedule, as you know, this is Twiggs County Public Schools certified teaching scale. This is what we have said the market demands for a qualified teacher in our school district. So what you see before you is a schedule that has been increased by 3% across all steps at each degree level and experience. The local supplements, as stated, are increased by double. 10 years ago, they were reduced by half, and we never restored those supplements. So now in this particular market, looking at the data, we were way off base. So we took the opportunity to at least restore those supplements back to where they originally were and increase the certified schedule by 3%. So as we look at some of the data, this was our district is included in the data. It's number 11 actually under 3,000. And so you see what we look like compared to other districts that are under 3,000. And Twitts County is underperforming in our current situation, and this is why it prompted us to look at making the increase to get us to market. This schedule is a part of the data as well, but it really focuses on the Middle Georgia RESA school systems. That's Bibb, Houston, Monroe, Twiggs. And it shows how we compare to those who are our neighbors, our direct neighbors. And so based upon where we were about 2,000 to 4,000 below what most school districts were paying. And so by us improving our schedule, we're now in the 39,000 area for a T4, a certified teacher with a bachelor's degree coming in first year. So we're able to compete more in that category because of this. So the classified salary schedule, most of the positions we had, such as the mechanic, head mechanic, director of transportation, those schedules were once here. We have deemed those positions in the past to be administrative roles, so they're now on the administrative schedule. So what you see before you are the classified schedules as it relates to all other positions in the district for FY22. And those schedules have been improved as well to ensure that we're meeting market demands. And these positions normally do not have a supplement. The reason they were not considered in the administrative schedule. The ones that had a supplement, they're on that schedule now. As far as our athletic supplements, there have been no changes to the athletic supplements. What the athletic director presented to the finance office in March is what you see before you. He has done the research, and everything that has aligned to his vision is presented. So I wanted to ensure that I presented what he knows is best for the program. And what you see before you is the high school sports, starting with the football program, cross country, basketball program. Continuation of the high school sports, baseball program, fast pitch softball program, soccer, and also the track program. The leadership team, cheerleading program, also field maintenance, and basketball clock bookkeeper. So for the high school athletic program, a total of $55,500. Middle school sports, football program, basketball, softball, baseball, and track. Soccer, and the total for the middle school program is $16,500. This concludes the portion of the salary studies. Are there any questions? And it's an information item. Any questions I can entertain, answer, or provide any clarity on this time?
Dr. Bullock, we thank you for providing us with the detailed information in our packet that we received prior to tonight's meeting. However, I see that you have included some additional documentation that further supports Mr. Austin's presentation. Thank you for a well-delivered presentation, Mr. Austin. Board members, do we have any discussion and questions at this time as I hope that we have many, so we can further discuss in detail our concerns as well as our accepting of a balanced budget for our fiscal year, upcoming fiscal year. Ms. Blackshear, would you use your microphone? Thank you.
Directly. With the administrative schedule and other supplements, for as the middle school principal, I know right now we don't have a direct middle school principal, so are we gonna align that with something different, or?
That's a good question. So we have in the past had the structure where we had 3 administrative bodies in the building, whether that was a high school principal, middle school principal, or AP, complex, and 2 APs. So in the event that we are able to, we know we're going to have 3 positions in that building. And as we discuss further, as we continue to build out the plan, we'll make a determination whether there will be a middle school principal or an additional assistant. That's why the position is allocated.
And one other thing I wanted to add.
Can I ask this question in reference to your question? Is it the goal, Dr. Bullard, to have 3 administrators, not identifying which 2 principals would remain high school or middle school, and just have 3 principals, complex and 2 principals?
Yes, there'll be 3 administrators in the comprehensive middle high school.
And they may not be defined as high school AP, middle school AP.
That is correct.
Thank you.
With the athletic supplement,
Yeah.
I know we did have a young man that was going to the state, right, to compete. Is it any way that you think that we can do something to maybe give a bonus to our winning team? You know, if they're doing great in soccer, if they're winning a lot of games, to kind of motivate our athletic department. 'Cause some of the sports I know we may not do. I know we didn't do a couple of them last year, so I'm just wondering if we can do something to kind of motivate the athletic team. If they're a winning team, you know, going to the state is great. So if we can do something, some incentive or something to kind of motivate.
We certainly can consider that, Board Member Blackshear, because all of these administrative supplements we may not make teams for. So we certainly can consider making an adjustment for the athletic teams that we have if they move forward and have a great season.
Let me make sure that I understand your question, Ms. Blackshear. Your question is for the athletic departments, are some of the athletic teams that we may not have had a season this year, but is it a good idea to give them a supplement or some type of incentive for being coaches?
Yeah, if they're a winning team, you know, if they got something great going on, like winning the state.
Dr. Bullard, I think that's a great consideration, but I do want to remind us that we did have some supplements that we approved and that have been paid out, but we actually did not have a sport, and they still retain that supplement. So maybe that's something we can further discuss. So I think being a winning team maybe there's some leeway there. Thank you, Ms. Blackshear. Does that conclude your questions?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Great questions.
Thank you.
Ms. King? Okay. I want to ask, I want to take a look at some of the things that Ms. Blackshear addressed in reference to supplements, and I saw that you defined athletic or coaches as high school. Are those the only coaches that we identify, or do we not have middle school coaches?
The athletic middle school supplements are on the, let me just go back. So we do have middle school sports or supplements. Is this what you're referring to, Mr. Harris?
I am.
Yes, sir.
So they're identified as assistant coaches.
Yes, sir. Based upon the plan that was presented.
would that coach be identified as an assistant coach throughout the season, and they may maintain athletics for middle school and high school?
That'll be upon discretion of the athletic director. We haven't received that guidance because that conversation hasn't happened yet. But I'm sure if that opportunity is in order,
Okay.
we can look at that.
I would like to further define that, Dr. Bullock, because what it would look like is a middle school football coach would have to, because from the look of the presentation or from the look of the tradition, is that a head coach is a head coach for basketball or football for the high school? Is that correct?
Well, if they're sharing responsibilities, that may be because they're on the same practice field or something of that nature. But from what I've interpreted, whatever they allocated for the assistant coach per school or per program, they're assigned to that area. I haven't been told any different as of yet.
So to further my question is, a assistant coach is expected to be an assistant to the head coach of varsity ball and be an assistant coach or serve as a liaison or a head coach for middle school with the same supplement.
So the assistant coach in middle school and the high school assistant coach had the same supplement, is what you're saying?
So you have a head coach for middle school football and an assistant coach for middle school football?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And this would be for all sports. We're just using football and basketball and softball because we did entertain soccer. And I don't know if that's a sport that we have active right now, but I want to be sure that we have full understanding that every school, if they have a team, they are provided with a head coach and an assistant coach.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the plan that's presented. Yes, sir.
Perfect. Proceed.
To the piece that I was talking about with the incentive, I think that we need to make sure we include in any competition, like the cheerleaders, if they go into state competition, the band. Let's not just look at football, basketball, and soccer. You know, we'll look at all of it.
So what you're recommending or to the board for further discussion, Ms. Blackshear, is an incentive base versus a traditional recurring supplement.
Whichever that superintendent and finance, whichever one that y'all feel is better. It fits in our budget, you know, that we can do.
What I think you are referring to as well is typically when our competitive teams move into regional and state play, there are additional practices, additional games, additional preparation for the student. So in the case that they move into regional and state, this is what I'm hearing. I'm just clarifying. In addition, they move into regional and state play to provide an additional incentive for those coaches to support those teams through that regional or state playoff. That's what I heard.
And that's a great mention, Ms. Baxter, as we've had that had to happen before, and finances may not have fully sponsored that team. So that's a great mention. Thank you. Any other board member concerns, questions? All right, I want to go back to Mr. Austin, our market analysis for our supplement salary schedules, if you will.
The administrative or the teacher?
Both, but we can start with administrative.
Okay.
All right. So for what defines a similar district, or what is a similar district? What does the state say that a similar district is?
Good question. So based upon the research, a similar district is about size or a student count. So we look at small systems that categorize anything under 5,000 in this example, and we will follow up on that category to define what a small system.
Okay. And the counties listed or all of the counties that surround us in this state of Georgia that may be similar to our district?
In this particular example, some of these may not be within our region. These are all districts across the state that qualify as small system.
Okay.
We may have some that are, like, for example, Montgomery's, there are 893 students, very similar to our size.
Just because we've had this conversation before during market analysis with what other districts look like in comparison to us, for the sake of time, because I have removed or what about Wilkinson County, um, which is our neighboring county?
So Wilkinson County did not elect to participate in this particular study. So we're not able to see that information. Only thing that we can see is the district that has volunteered that information.
Which other counties have you identified that neglected or opted out to participate in this study that we may look a little like, that are a little bit closer to us in our geographical makeup?
Only one that I identified is Wilkinson, but I can continue to research to see the other counties. But normally, this gives us a good picture of what that will look like. Most smaller districts, if they do not choose to participate, the information they gather may not be in this format to give us a good estimate of what they're paying.
Okay. So in reference to the market analysis, and we talk about size, what other factors are included in this study that may be similar? Is there millage rate similar to ours? Their tax base, their housing? Is there any what other factors contribute to districts that look like ours?
Great question. So if they look like us, more than likely they have a revenue base similar budgets. Tax base is very different because, again, we're small, but our wealth status is higher than the Bibb County, for example, because of lands. So we don't have that apples to apple comparison because there's too many anomalies to consider. But what we can consider is that it's days that are factored into the actual supplement, or to the salary. There's function and responsibility that's factored. And they'll also give us comments about the person experience level or degree they may have. So we use that information to quantify what their salary is.
My last question for this piece in reference to administrators are certified employees. Population of students has been discussed. What about the population of employees? When we talk market analysis, are we looking at districts that may employ more individuals within their district that they may not receive FTE for? Is that something that we are considering with our presentation? Are we looking to pull funds from other revenue, other grant-based incentives from the state, from the government? In reference to what our FTE says in the past, as we've discussed this, I know for the past 2 years, we had positions that we wanted to further discuss that we may not have received enough FTE for, and how do we fund the positions, in addition to how do we sustain the positions?
Great question. So the first thing we look at is, can this role do multiple things within this scope? And that may qualify for federal funding. And we have done a great job in ensuring that when a position comes in, that there are other opportunities that federal funding can help offset. So that's our first approach.
Pause. we have done a great job identifying positions that could do multiple roles that we may receive federal funding for.
No, so the scope of that role, let's, for example, if you have a teaching and learning person, That person may be responsible for professional development. The person may be responsible for the overall performance of a Title I school, which will give them the ability to qualify for federal funding. And that has been a historic thing for anyone in teaching and learning, for example. You can look at PBIS, actually attaching that to someone who focuses on behavior things as relates to the children.
We've done a great job identifying those roles and employing individuals. Have we been effective in providing multiple roles for those individuals?
Well, what we have, we've done the best that we could. And so if we have a room for improvement, we'll continue to look at developing systems that could make us more effective and increase fidelity.
So give me an example of one of those positions in this presentation that we would look at multiple roles that we would be able to receive multiple funds for as we qualify certified staff. Give me just 2 examples if you have to.
Sure. So the assistant superintendent of teaching and learning, for example, across multiple districts, that's a very common position in the school our size. And so normally that person handles federal funds. And so what we see in the past, that 80% of that salary was tied to federal funds, 20% tied to general. So we have the ability, since you're dealing with the development of teachers, that's the title program. So that gives you oversight over the funding that you need to develop a proper plan. That's one example.
And a second one?
The second example could be someone with personalized learning. We had a position in the district with personalized learning that they was able actually doing the PBIS. They were ensuring that our students had positive behavior reinforcements. And so we had about 25% of that salary coming from that grant as well. So we've had opportunities to ensure that our administrators were maximized on federal funding, even academic coaches. Normally they're funded half out of federal programs, half out of general. So the title funding gives flexibility to look at instructional positions like that.
Would one of those federal funding pieces be PBIS for the coach, academic coach?
Very well, if that's their strong suit, we could do that.
Correct. Okay.
Mhm.
Outside of teaching and learning, curriculum and instruction, what would be another area that we would possibly discuss that may receive some additional funds to offset those roles, those multiple roles?
Most of the title funding supports instructional needs.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll look at local and state funding for any other classified or non-instructional needs. So the state do provide, for example, a secretary or an administrative support. They do provide funding, counselors. They provide funding for those particular things. So we have generated state revenue that helps us with the other roles, and the rest will, of course, come from local funding. Fortunately, we have CARES money as well, so we're able to offset some things with CARES.
Thank you for driving down that street. Let's discuss CARES monies.
Sure.
And the positions that may be offset by that funding, and what limitations, Dr. Bullard, if you will, what we have on those fundings, and what does CARES Act say that we can fund when we look at the organizational chart that Dr. Bullard so graciously provided us with that look beautiful for our upcoming year. What other positions could those funds offset when you start talking about certified staff, non-certified staff, and in this season? As we talk about, we know that some CARES Act, and you correct me if I'm wrong, sure, they have a expiration date, if you will, and they have to be used in a certain time frame, and then those others we may be able to use and sustain for years to come. Let's break that down in full totality to talk about what other positions, or what positions are we looking at right now in certified staff, positions that are traditionally certified staff that we may employ some people that may not be certified, but because of the CARES Act monies, we can employ those people to be a help to those certified staff members, faculty and staff.
So the way CARES is written is 3 versions of this program. You had your CARES 1 that we've budgeted for. There was $400,376. We went through that process.
Say that number one more time.
$400,376. That was our first CARES allocation. Second CARES was $1.6 million. This is the CARES that we're currently planning for. And then there's something they call the ARP, or the American Rescue Plan, which is $3.4 3.6 million. That number is our biggest pot that we have, our most recent funding allocation that we have from the federal government and state level. That expires in 2024. So we have the ability now to use all three of those pots of money until 2022, 2023, and 2024. Each have a staggering expiration date. So we're aware that sustainability becomes in question, that we have to plan each budget based upon the expiration. And when we look at, and if we can talk about SIG for an example, once that program ends, we will have documentation to that position that will identify to say, once this program is done, that position will no longer exist if we cannot sustain that position. So when we look at who will be in the CARES funding, we will look at learner loss first, because that's the main thing that we're addressing in these CARES. Learner loss, the impact of COVID to our operational systems and things of that nature. So we will provide a list, and we're working in conjunction with the principals to identify staffing needs that are in direct impact to instruction. Once we have that information, we will provide a list of who will be funded through CARES, whether it's permanently or whether there's a transitional period for that person.
Great response. Thank you. I think you answered 6 questions that I had that I don't have to ask now, but I do have some more.
Sure.
In reference to sustainability, let's talk, great example that you use concerning the SIG grant, which provided us how much money?
I'm not 5 million. 5 million. So
Okay. So
8 million, I'm sorry.
Help me to understand. I wanna understand this before I move on.
Sure.
In reference to receiving these grant funds, the goal is to implement positions that are helpful in the essence of learning loss,
Sure.
especially during these times. At what point do we review our funds as they are dispersed, review the positions in which we implement it, and we further engage in conversation of how do we as a district sustain those positions after the funding has been depleted? What we see a trend in, and what I see a trend in our small county, is that we get great grant funding and we have a good run with the positions, but we don't see the residual in the results in our student achievement. Those positions are great. They serve their purpose during that time, but what happens after the grant funding? Do we see 2 to 3, 4, 6 more classes graduate without those supportive services? So what happens? Are we trying to build for capacity in those positions that have been vital and very helpful during the grant funding? But what is the sustainability? How do we move towards a mindset of, we had this during SIG, it served us well. How do we now implement that in our district until it serves us no more? What I see a trend in is that we get grant funding, we fund good positions, and when the funding is gone, the position is over. That was understood when we received the funds. How do we as a district, Dr. Bullard, now implement those positions and find other funding, find other monies, whether it be local, whether it be federal, whether it be state funding, to also stack those positions that we see continuous student achievement throughout our district, K through 12? How do we continue to maintain that? Whether it's one position at a time, 2 positions at a time. But if we look back and we take a deep dive into the SIG funding and we see what we had then, after 2 years, what do we have now? That's strategic planning. I want to be sure when we talk about what we're implementing in this season with funds. Great conversation, Dr. Bullitt. Thank you for the opportunity. I want to be sure in this season that we accept these positions that are necessary for our growth, for the vision, the beautiful vision that our new superintendent has for our district. But for sustainability, how do we grow with this market analysis to continue to look at, not just during the budget season, but continue to look at the counties that are surrounding us, to look at their implementation of positions, and how do we build for the future, not 2 years here, 2 years there. I don't think we'll find a research that says that anything that has been implemented for 2 years was fully effective in a school district. My question and my plea to the board is I want us to look at this in full totality as we discuss. We're talking monies, we're talking positions. But what about the student achievement piece? Now, that's being presented. Dr. Bullock will give us how will this directly affect student achievement. He'll give us that. But I want the board to further our discussion with, we saw that in the past. SIG left, we didn't have it. What happened? Who's doing it now? I want to be able to have those conversations because grant funds are great. We want them, Ms. Reardon. We want us to continue to write for multiple grants. But the sustainability for the district, if the government says we have no funding for you for 10 years, what do we do as a small district? Do we just completely remove those positions? And it affects our student achievement. It affects our CCRPIs. It affects our graduation rate. That's the conversation that we must have continuously, not just during budgetary season or budget season. So, Mr. Austin, I think that concludes my questions for that portion of the presentation. I want to move on to transportation. I see that we have two positions that we're discussing now that were approved maybe a year ago.
Yes.
Okay. From the board, the question is, why were these two positions never filled? And in this trying season of finance, as we have great funding, more than we had in the time that and I do think this may be a little bit more than a year, Mr. Austin, maybe almost two, in this discussion. It would have given us a good little leeway of understanding those positions and possibly remove them if they were ineffective or necessary in this season, or look at the salary increases. You spoke also of a person or persons that may be within that transportation department that does receive a supplement versus what we want to provide these new positions with. Am I correct?
That would be the maintenance director.
Okay. So the maintenance director does receive a supplement.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the other two positions, can you give me those titles again?
For head mechanic and maintenance director?
Head mechanic and maintenance director.
Yes, sir.
Those are two positions that we currently that are currently vacant.
No, sir.
Okay.
They're currently being filled.
Okay.
And they have administrative supplements attached to them.
Okay. We received opportunity for another person for the shop, for the bus shop. Did we fill that position?
No, sir.
Okay. Is that something that we will be possibly considering, Dr. Bullock?
What was the title? For the bus shop, it'll be a foreman.
What
That'll
we can
help
do,
with
Mr.
capacity.
Chair, is determine if the absence of that foreman significantly impacted the provision of our transportation services and the maintenance of our bus, excuse me, our fleet. If that foreman, as you mentioned in previous grants, you have very critical positions that we put in place that impact student learning, they impact graduation rate, they impact social emotional learning for students. When those positions aren't there, it's visibly an impact to student progression and those other factors. If the absence of this foreman has impacted the fleet and the effectiveness of our transportation department, and I'm hearing you say in 2020, 2021, that's what we need to determine. Because I don't believe we have a foreman that is hired in our transportation department. So if the absence of that foreman has negatively impacted our transportation department, then we do need to consider providing it. If it did not, then that means we can potentially utilize those funds in another place.
Right. Thank you. I don't know if that title was foreman, Mr. Austin, but I do recall that the board approved another body for the shop that could aid our current team there, because it was almost a one man show for a while. So the need must have been relevant to the board for the board to approve the position. And I just want to remind the board that that position is still vacant as we talk about salary schedule, salary scales, and that was over a year ago. So if the need was there then, in this season, Dr. Bullard, thank you. You'll further assess the situation and deem it necessary or worthy of a higher or later conversation or discussion. I see a 3% increase for non-certified staff. Anybody want to jump in or have any questions before I further? Thank you. We had a discussion some months ago in reference to certified positions, and we opted out to give those salary increases in those certified schedules or certified salaries. We would further discuss as a board prior to July 1. There were some talk among the board in board meeting that this was something that may needed further discussion, and we would entertain and for it to be implemented July 1. Some of those areas I do recall vividly, and if I have to go back to my notes, I can tell you all of them. But I want to mention that I know that chief transportation, that position was one, and this scale that we discussed at that time, Mr. Austin, was the classified staff that had a bachelor's degree, Dr. Bullard. And we entertained some conversation in reference to that position, in reference to our secretaries, our front office administrators. Do you recall any other positions that I may be?
And payroll.
And payroll, the payroll department.
Payroll associate, sir.
Okay, payroll associate. I do recall that one. That's one that we added after the first presentation, if I'm not mistaken, because there are some bodies there that have, there are some positions that have reached that place in the midst of this conversation. I want to discuss that the percentage that may have been on the table for these positions may not have been financially feasible to the board or to the district. Am I right? Or is there some discussion there?
The percentage that you currently see?
So let me ask it in this way. The percentage that I currently see is greater than or less than the percentage that was presented to us prior in the presentation of those roles.
So it was based upon that scale that was presented. Because I think we agree that those positions would go forth. We'll have a conversation about them before they're approved again. But we did base our starting point on those schedules. And then we approved them from there.
So those positions that has not been approved, or it has been approved, it just hasn't been implemented.
So it was improved in order for us to ensure that they was at market as well.
Improved and approved.
And we did approve them as well. Going into July 1 of this year, they will come effective, in effect.
Okay.
So that was the original plan.
And those numbers are the same as they are. Those numbers at that time of the presentation are the same as these numbers?
No, sir.
Okay.
They were improved from that because everyone on that schedule received an increase. So they were included in that. We set a new base for what that salary would be by implementing those 4 schedules. And that was my new base to improve upon.
So the positions that I named have been improved as in increased based off this schedule.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Going back to the bus maintenance, has he not been doing all of the service that he has needed to do? We need another mechanic on that job?
He has done a great job. We're
That's
bidding
what I
for
thought.
we're bidding for capacity. So in the event that he wants to take an extended vacation, there's a health issue arise, we have someone that can learn from him and assist. That was the ideal to bid for capacity. All of our employees have performed exceptionally well in those departments.
I would hope that we build our entire district, Mr. Austin, on the mindset of not one person does one thing and not one person can do that one thing. We have multiple people. As in your absence, I'm pretty sure there's someone that can fill in. So I think that we've done a disservice to that department by having one person to depend on for all of the duties and responsibilities in that arena. That concludes my questions and comments, Dr. Bullard, in
Sir.
reference to the certified staff of administrators and teachers, and we're glad to know that they will receive an increase. So that is a win. That is a glow for our district. So thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions or concerns about the salary stated portion? All right, so we're at the front. I'm sorry, you gotta go to your next bullet. Dr. Bullet, board chair, it's okay if I go to the next bullet item, or do you have any further discussion for that?
Business agenda item B, salary supplement schedules, information item. Mr. Austin.
So the budget calendar in review. So these are the items that we have done. We've talked about the budget calendar with you all in November last year. We've looked at FTE. We've looked at the current supplement salary schedules and all that was presented in March, what we currently have. And so as we progress, we have a lot of administrative meetings that took place. We reviewed our HR procedure and hiring practices. We also looked at, as in the transition of superintendents, we looked at developing the administrative schedule as you see before you with all the administrative input that we've had. So as well, we've looked at presenting a tentative budget, budget overview. We've done a budget overview. We looked at a tentative budget. And we also are in a position now where we're on the latter part of the budget calendar, and that's approving the supplements and schedules. We will do that first, and then we'll look at approving the tentative budget. Now, what we have, outstanding to do is this budget overview that we're doing now, the approval of the supplements and salary schedule. We have to advertise the budget, approve it, and then the tax digest normally happens in August, second week in August, and that depends on what the tax commissioner provides at the time. So the revision to the budget calendar, May 18th, which is today's date, we're presenting all the salary schedule supplements in totality. We'll look at on the 25th, which is next Tuesday, to approve the salary schedules and supplement. June 8th, we'll approve the tentative budget for advertisement, and June 22nd, we'll look to approve the budget for fiscal year 2022. And this is customary to what we've done in the past, approving the salary schedule and supplements first, looking at our tentative budget, and then running for advertisement and approving. The millage rate always will come in August, so that's dated. That date will never change. Okay, now we've talked about a lot of this stuff in the question, so some of this we'll skip through, but we'll continue to use our staffing allocation to meet our instructional operation needs. We've talked about CARES, so CARES will be a very instrumental part in balancing the budget and improving the things we need for instructional operational needs. and also title funding. Call these our 3 pillars, if you will. So the top priorities, the considerations I want to point out is that our TRS, teacher retirement system, that employer rate will increase from 19.06% to 19.81%. The state health benefit is not expected to increase for non-certified or certified. That's $945 per month, $11,340 per year. Austerity is factored into our quality basic education. This is what we call QBE. We were excited when austerity went away, and then of course we come into an economic time such as this. Austerity is back now, and so we have to consider that in this factor. The CARES Act will be used for the continuity of staff and other priorities that the district has. We will gradually restore travel allocations. There's no tax millage rate increase in FY22, so we'll maintain at 16.60. We will increase the certified salary schedule by 3% and the classified. We talked about that. And all of the market studies will be aligned to data and research, and we've discussed that. So again, going back to the priorities, one-to-one personal learning, assessment tools in place to close the achievement gap. We talk about how we will monitor and have fidelity in the process to ensure that our return on investment is there. These are some of the things that help with that. The learning management system, in the event that we have a professional learning day for the teachers, the students will still be able to learn in a hybrid solution. We've had virtual learning, so this will give us opportunity to build that capacity. We're going to continue to maximize staff according to allotment sheet. We're looking at positions such as a graduation coach, of course, there's 2 assistant superintendents that we spoke about, and having or 3 administrative bodies in the building, whether it's two assistant superintendents and 1 principal, or 2 principal and 1 assistant principal. So let's look at our millage rate at a glance. So over 5 or 6 years, we've seen increase, we've seen decrease, but we always have been in a positive trajectory of our tax base. So that's one of the benefits of being in Twiggs County, is that we have a very good tax base. And so we generate about $351,000 per meal, and that was as of 2020. So as we look at the comparison, we talked about this before. The main thing to highlight here in FY22 is that, of course, we anticipated that we would have some students leave the district for various reasons, whether they're other districts, whether they're homeschooled, or whatever the reason that COVID has provided. So we anticipate a decrease, and we've seen that. Luckily, we have really maximized each category as it relates to our quality basic education formula, and it has generated more dollars. As you know, categories had different weights. Highest weighted categories produces more revenue, and we have really focused on that. And so that was allowing us to offset some of these unforeseen revenue decreases that we've anticipated. So we look at the past budgets. This compares FY21 to FY20. You will see that local revenue, we had an increase in our local revenue, which assisted a lot, especially going into COVID. At that time, state QBE, quality-based education, was reduced by 17% based upon our wealth status. Other districts received 11, 13, 12, so it was a variation of reduction. And so we had to fill that void. We was able to use CARES money as well to help offset that budget, and that was our first round of CARES. At that time, we did not know whether we would have an additional support or funding. So we really prepared our budget to withstand anything that it could have at that particular moment. So that's the comparison from FY21 to FY20. All right, so as we look currently, FY22 to FY21. So we cannot afford not to have key positions in place. We cannot afford to not look at learning loss from a holistic standpoint and really address it in this budget. So we will definitely use all the resources that we have, from federal funding to local funding, state funding, CARES, to balance the budget and provide us with those resources that we have talked about, that we went back and forth in our dialogue just recently about positions, about programs, about anything that can actually improve our instructional platforms. This budget will do that. What's highlighted in yellow is just to give you an illustration of some of the functional impacts. For example, in instruction, we just talked about the 3%. We just talked about the TRS rate increasing. And that's shown there. You will see an increase in instruction category because all our teachers are housed there. So it would be expected to see an increase there. As we looked into general administration, we talked about in the past about assistant superintendent having federal funds to offset his salary. We've done that in the past. And we had not replaced that one position, and we had only had one assistant superintendent. So now in this particular function, you will have two assistant superintendents with full salaries. Because of the multiple roles that the current assistant superintendent had or have, that gives us the ability to budget in different categories, such as operations, such as maintenance, such as people services. So the increase is based upon two full positions being added to that. We look at school administration. We just talked about adding an additional body to the actual school level, including an academic coach as well. We're looking at academic coach, graduation coach. This will be in that particular function of 2,400. It's school administration, it's school based, so it will be in that particular category. As we look at maintenance and operations, we continue to look at improving safety, and we've really looked at the things that we need. Mr. Bacon and his department has done a fantastic job of providing that information. So we've been able to budget based upon the new needs that has arisen. As it relates to transportation, we normally budget a bus bond allocation in the budget. Well, the state provided us the money for the bus, so we do not need that $85,000 that we normally budget in that area. And of course, you had salary increases as well in that category. But now we're able to use that money to help support other functions as it relates to instructional operations. So that's the key difference in that area. The state has been good to us as far as buses is concerned. So as we talk about quality basic education, I want to focus on the word basic. This is literally the structure that will give us the bare minimum we need to educate our students. And we look at this item, and I always look at my boot. And I think about the L shape of the boot as being the foundation that I walk on, knowing that we have allocated 42.37 teachers that the state say that we can fund. We look at that first. Inside of it, we also see in the shoelace, if you will, we also see the administrative roles. We look at the principals, superintendent, assistant superintendent, support functions. This gives us an idea of how many positions we earn based upon our FTE. So yes, our FTE has decreased, but the state still says we earn this in order for us to perform at this basic level. And as we look down further, on the left side, we start going into transportation. We start looking at nursing, and we're still provided funding for those services. While this allocation sheet is a lot less in our normal allocation, which is at the very bottom, you will see we have about $3.4 million that we're earning. However, we're still able to do the things we need to fund a basic education for our students. So I want to categorize that. So we talked about the teachers, state allocation, 42.37. Normally we budget about 43 teachers in that category. So we're in line with that, and as I talked about in previous board meetings, that we create additional allotments that we can use to help offset anything that looks like more than. So as we go to the next point, we look at, of course, we allotted three administrative positions at the district level, 2 assistant superintendents and 1 CFO and an accountant. And we are budgeting for exactly that. We look at school administration. We talked about the current administration at elementary school is 1 principal, 1 assistant principal, and that the middle high school will have, but the comprehensive school will have 3 administrative positions in that school. So some of the things that we do not use as it relates to state allotments, if you will, is the social worker position and the psychologist. We have other resources in the community from the state level that helps fill this void. So customarily, we have, since I've been here, we haven't budgeted for these items in the budget. So we're able to use this additional funding that would have been lost to reallocate to other needs. And this generates what I call the Twiggy Bank. And so we're able to look at 2.56 of unused allotment that we're able to look at. And as we talk about some of the questions about how do we fund positions, how do we ensure that we're maximizing revenue in these positions? If you look at, for an example, an executive director role, 80% will come from general, 20%, for example, will come from federal fund. We look at the middle high school administration, 0.87, because we have earned 4.13, but we're trying to fund 5 bodies or 5 positions. So we're able to use our Twiggy Bank to offset that. And we talked about the district academic coach, 50% coming from general and 50% coming from federal programs. So we're able to use that fund as well to help relieve some of the financial burdens off of general funds. So we talk about what's going to keep us going. So we know that instruction needs, we have done a great job in the past using the first cares to generate a lot of those instructional needs through buying additional computers, to doing certain things with hardware, and we'll continue to address those needs in cares. Hardware and software needs are allocated throughout the budget for $45,000, and that's in literally from functions 1,000 to 2,900. So they'll allow us to do things for tech supplies, ongoing support needs, and repairs. And we've discussed the mechanic and the maintenance position that we will continue to have in a line item if permissible for capacity. And we'll do a need analysis on that as well to justify that need. As seen in the last board meeting, this is the current tentative budget. In its totality, we consider federal funds in our budget. We consider all title programs, SPED, and also school nutrition in our budget as well, because we do, of course, have employees that are paid directly from school nutrition funds and some of our title funds. So that helps us budget holistically with all our resources. Any questions or concerns?
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Austin, on the budget overview, which is an information item.
Yes.
Board members, do we have any questions? Further discussion of a great presentation? Of course I do. All right, Mr. Austin, let's go back to the slide that shared our social worker and mental health personnel.
Sure.
Your statement was that in your time in Twigs thus far, you have not seen either position open or available, or you are serviced in the district. Am I correct?
We haven't hired in-house for that. We've outsourced those services.
Okay. When we did outsource those services, my question is, do we receive any FTE for either position?
Yes, sir. What you see before you, the 0.28, is how much we receive based upon our student population.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we shared this conversation before, and what was brought to the board before was that we did not receive FTE for a social worker.
Was that in our budget conversation, Mr. Harris?
Twice, 2 years. It may not have been your conversation, but it was in a budgetary. It was in budget conversation or in reference to salaries and employees, and why didn't we have a social worker on staff?
And if that was brought up, I would imagine the reason is it's 0.28. It's not a full position.
Mm-hmm.
So I would imagine that conversation would have went like, we do not earn enough to fund a full person. Then that would that would justify that reason.
That would be some other positions that we funded that did not receive enough FTE. So I just want to get clarity on why this position has been overlooked consistently. In this percentage that we received from the state may have been lower at that time, but it was stated that we did not receive FTE for a social worker. But in this season, Dr. Bullard has saw fit in a need to position a social worker in our district. So I am pleased to know that we're working on some partnerships to offset that. In addition, there's some other discussion coming forward. So thank you, Dr. Bullard, for that presentation on last Tuesday night. I did, if I heard correctly, on last Tuesday night versus tonight, the academic coach. I heard academic coach tonight, but am I wrong in hearing academic coaches on last Tuesday night?
Yes. So the district academic coach was an example that I used in this presentation. However, we're able to look at, going back to CARES, that we have to sustain anything additional. We have that opportunity. So we'll look at CARES funding to get that additional academic coach. It's part of the elementary school plan to have an additional academic coach at the building. But for sustainability purposes, we can sustain one district academic coach at this current moment. And that's why it's placed in the budget.
But because we have CARES Act, why wouldn't we include both? If we know that those funding can be allocated for such position. So for budgetary purposes, you do one. For sustainability purposes, to overview or present to the community and the board. But for this season, we may be able to employ two because we do have the funds.
Absolutely.
Okay. That can be confusing because we'll say we have two, but it's only in the budget for one when the board further discusses that position in the near future. So that may be a little confusing for us. It's confusing for me. Let me speak for me. It may be confusing for me on a historical point of view, if you will. If I went back and looked at in 2025, should the community say I'm still on the board, and I look back at the budget and I say that we have one in our budget, but the board may argue me we only had one, but I know for a fact that we had two in our district at the time. So from a budgetary point of view, I definitely get your point, and I definitely see why it would be important to view it that way at first glance. But in the second glance, if I know that we are going to employ two, even though it's coming from CARES Act, which, and and this is the conversation that we had on last Tuesday in reference to the funding source for positions. We'll know at 2025 we may not have CARES Act anymore, but I would like to know in some documentation that we did employ two versus that one. Moving on, that was a small question. Moving on, I looked at the media support, and I see that we only receive FTE for one salary there. Is media support an area that can also be offset with a salary or supplement through CARES Act funds?
If it's addressing learning loss, yes.
Okay. Well, the Media Center, I think, definitely addresses learning loss. I know currently we do have Dr. Bullock, one media specialist that works throughout two buildings. Elementary media specialists and middle high school media specialists may not be quite the same focus, if you will. My mindset would say that elementary grades media specialist focus would be, I won't tell you what the focus would be. I'm not looking at the description of the job right now, but what I will tell you is I know it's not the same as a 6 or 5 through 12. I want us, as we've been doing this for a while, sharing that position. Dr. Bullard, I would love for us to entertain the possibility of providing JES with a media specialist, some type of media person that may work under the direction of our certified media specialist in this season, because we've been sharing that for a while, and I do think that they deserve, in the essence of learning loss, a full-time person to address the media needs of a school, of a full school. So sharing that half day here and half day there, I just don't see it being effective when I think education at large, because there are only certain things that a media specialist could do. And if she's not in position for the full day, that looks like there's some scheduling conflicts of what can be done in that school during those times that she's available. That's just my little mind thinking that way. Man, I may be completely wrong, but I wanted to address that opportunity if there's some funding there, Dr. Bullard.
Absolutely. We certainly will consider that, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Austin, what is the current state per pupil amount, student per pupil amount?
The current state per pupil amount as it relates to what, Mr. Harris?
Just general, and correct me, I may be asking the question wrong. What do we receive from the state when we talk? Is it broken down in that way? As in, we receive funding from the state per student, our full population.
What I see and what I budget for is what's in front of us on the allotment sheet. So when they base it on category and they tell us how many students are in that category, if there's other data, I have to research that to provide that. But
Are you asking what we receive from the state per FTE? If that's what you're asking? I think what he's asking is how much does our district earn per FTE based on our millage rate? I think that's what he's asking. Is that what you're asking?
I'll further research and ask later.
Okay.
Thank you. Also, I see, and I glance at the salary, but the school nurse, we only have one.
yes,
Is there some room there, Dr. Bullock, to have two, so that each school is provided under some CARES Act funding, as we're still in a pandemic, and we still have some need for some extra hands to assure that our district is kept safe, our students are kept safe, our scholars are safe in their environment. If we have a little hiccup at JES and the nurses over at the middle high school, she has to stop what she's doing to go service another school or another student at another location. Is there some opportunity there to look at some partnership, possible employment through the CARES Act funding?
That definitely can be a consideration. And I do want to remind the board that we are submitting to Emory University Pediatric Medicine a grant for approval by June the 7th for us to establish school-based health clinic within our schools, both the high school and the elementary school, if approved. And we believe we have a strong grant that, if approved, that will provide us with funding money initially to plan for our school-based health clinic, which will then, after that first year of planning, allow us to provide a physical, mental, dental, and social emotional professional full-time in our schools to serve our students, our staff, and our community. But until we have the announcement that we have won that grant, we will consider and look at our CARES funding for additional nurse to serve in our schools.
Thank you, Dr. Bullock. As we often discuss the many partnerships that we have under this new direction within the first 30, 40, 44 days, so we appreciate that partnership as well, as it's necessary. I want to go back to Mr. Austin. I'll go back to the salary supplement schedule for a quick second. I want to give you a hypothetical. If I am head coach basketball varsity high school. Can I also serve as the assistant coach or head coach for middle school?
According to what I know at this current moment, those positions are for the positions budgeted. I'm not sure if dual roles is a part of the plan at the current moment.
Let me ask my question in your capacity, since you answered that way. Can I receive 2 supplements?
We have in the past had coaches receive something for different sports. If it was 2 different sports they were coaching.
If I'm head coach, can I receive 2 head coach supplements?
Yes, we have done in the past.
Okay. Proceed.
Great thing about the nurse. I think, the children definitely need that. Or with the social worker, I know you talked a little bit about that. Are we required to have a social worker? I know we have less, I know we've had one before years.
It is a part of QBE
Okay.
because the state does recognize the need for home visits and services to be provided in the home.
Mhm.
And in case we have situations with attendance as well, that we're able to address the attendance issue with students who may have attendance concerns. So the state does see that as a need. Again, our allocation is only 0.28 of a person. Do want to remind the board that we have a defined partnership with Rivers Edge in Macon to provide Twiggs County a dedicated clinician who will provide services for Twiggs County students. Those services will be provided in the school, and if necessary, also, she can go into the home. She's not a social worker. She's a clinician, trained as a clinician, mental health clinician, social, emotional, behavioral, etc. But she can address all of the concerns of a social worker. But did I answer your question?
Yes.
We
yes.
will meet the need through that partnership. And also, I want to say that we'll also meet the need in terms of attendance with our high stakes attendance students if the board approves our budget recommendations through our graduation coach in our secondary school for our middle school and high school students. We currently now don't have that graduation coach which would attend to the needs of all of our seniors graduating, but we do have what's his grant, Mr. Rodney Perry? The GRASP
Yeah.
grant. The GRASP grant has allowed for us to serve the needs of some high-risk students, attendance being one of the issues. And we know that we can track our attendance of our students from the point that they begin in our pre-K. We can track them all the way through graduation or not graduation. And we can do that we know we can do it. We've already seen the data. So we're going to utilize that position also to work with the middle school students who do have issues in terms of attendance, that graduation coach. He or she will take on those students as well as additional that are coming up to the middle school, as well as our high school.
Okay. So I know we just have the 2 counselors.
Yes.
So the graduation coach, with the 11th and 12th grade, would they be kind of keeping track with the 11th and 12th grade?
Directly focused on them because that is one of the main functions.
Mm-hmm.
But because we're losing the GRASP grant,
Yes.
we're going to also assign them those students. They
Okay.
identified 20 students through the GRASP grant that counselor was to work specifically with to ensure their success. In the absence of that grant, we don't have that targeted focus on those students, but that will become one of the duties for that graduation coach as well, because we've seen the attendance affects their graduation.
Yes.
So we're not going to wait until they get to the 11th grade.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of
Okay.
sense. Thank you.
So, Dr. Bullen, in reference to the partnership, we spoke last Tuesday in reference to truancy and looking at that attendance at large for the district. So, your plan is to offset that duty of truancy or truancy officer with a graduation coach for middle high. How do we combat truancy or attendance for JES?
We're going to do it with our clinician from River's Edge. So, and I think at that point, because we're going to literally start not just with pre-K, we're actually going to begin doing some work from the 0 to 5 as well. We're going to really work with families that we've had traditional concerns with attendance and really allow that clinician to work with those families even before we get the kids in our schools. So we'll have that record, and then when they pass over, do that bridge to middle school, the graduation coach will pick them up. Yeah. We're grateful for that. We don't have to pay that salary. We're really grateful for River's Edge for providing the clinician. But yes, that's going to be a wonderful bridge for us. We should not lose any students due to attendance problems going forward.
Board members, any further questions? If not, thank you, Mr. Austin.
Thank you.
Previewing our agenda, I see that we're at our executive session place. Any questions in reference to the presentations that have been so greatly presented to us tonight? All right. If there are no further discussion, any further questions, I entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a motion that we exit our business section and go into executive session.
Motions are properly made by Vice Chairman, Mr. Isaiah Rouse, to exit public session and enter into executive session. May I have a second?
A second.
Motion's been properly seconded by District 3 Representative Ms. Rhonda King. Any discussion? If there should be none, again, this motion is moved from public session to executive session. If there's no discussion at this time, I'll know you by saying aye, raising your right hand. Any opposes? No opposes. That motion carries unanimously. At this time, we'll move into executive session.
Board members, we'll be in the conference room down.
Good evening again, and thank you for attending our board meeting, our call session board meeting, May 18th, 2021. Uh, Thank you for your attention, board, as we have maintained some great conversation and continuous conversations in executive session for personnel matters. At this time, I would like to bring us from public session, from executive session back to public session. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to move us back to public session.
So move.
Motion's been properly made by Ms. Teresa Blackshear,
Second.
seconded by Vice Chair Mr. Isaiah Rouse. Is there any discussion? No discussion at this time. All in favor of moving from executive session back to public session, I know you by saying aye, raise your hand. No opposes. That motion carries unanimously. At this time, we will hear our executive session personnel matters as the board will entertain all of these. Board, we don't have any discussion for votes tonight, as these are appointments and renewals that have been presented by our superintendent, Dr. Matt Bullard. At this time, I will address and inform our public and our viewers, and our community of the superintendent's appointments, transfer appointments, resignations, or contract renewals at this time. And in conclusion of my announcements of said appointments, transfers of appointments, resignations, or certified or certificate renewals, certified renewals, Superintendent Dr. Matt Bullock will come back with an announcement to our school district as well as our community at large. At this time, I will list these board as they are presented to us. At this time, the board would like to announce from the superintendent's recommendation as an appointment of Assistant Superintendent Dr. Chandrina Griffin Stewart. Will be serving our Tweaks County School District, Public School District, as our new Assistant Superintendent. Congratulations, Dr. Griffin Stewart, as you will be joining our team as early as June 1st. Thank you, Dr. Bullock, for that recommendation, as the board has agreed to your appointment. It's an appointment we want. Resignation. Mr. James Paldo will be resigning as bus driver and in our district. So we're sad to see him go, but we accept the resignation of Mr. James Paldo. Renewal, contract renewal. Mr. Brian Howell, SPED Director. And our final contract renewal would be Mr. Jamal Harris, contract renewal, Tweaks County Middle High School Principal. Dr. Bullock, do you have any announcements to make as our appointments, resignations, and certified renewals have been given to our community and to our school district?
Mr. Chair, we would like to thank you, the Board of Education, for considering these renewals, as well as the resignation of Mr. Paldo. We as well are sad to see him go, and the appointment of Dr. Chandrina Griffin Stewart, as we continue to move our district forward to continue to inspire, challenge, and prepare all students to compete globally.
Thank you, Dr. Bullock, for your recommendations tonight, as the board has accepted your appointments. Dr. Bullock, this time, if you would entertain our partnership and our announcement to our stakeholders and community.
Yes, sir. It is my pleasure again to announce that Mr. Darquez Denard, who is a Tweaks County High School graduate and now a cornerback with the Atlanta Falcons, is bringing his Denard Difference football training camp back to Tweaks County. They are going to have a tryouts for their youth football travel team on May the 29th. May the 29th, which is a Saturday, from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the football field at our high school. We want to encourage all young men who are interested in playing and learning from an NFL trained football star on our state football team, Atlanta Falcons, to come out and participate in this great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for them to learn from one of the best who has already been identified by the NFL. So May the 29th from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., the Denard Difference will be returning to the Twiggs County High School football field.
Boy, can we celebrate the return of Mr. Denard returning his camp back to our hometown. Thank you, Mr. Denard, and welcome home. Welcome back to the pit. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a son of the district. We appreciate you, and we're looking forward to the continuation of this partnership. At this time, Dr. Bullock, do you have any concerns, discussion, or further announcements before we adjourn for tonight?
I want to just remind the community of our graduation, which is this coming Friday, May 21st, but also remind the community that Friday is a half day for all other educators here in the district. So I want to make sure parents are prepared for that as well. Friday, the May 21st, is graduation night for our seniors, and we're looking forward.
Thank you, Dr. Bullard. Are there any other discussions, any comments from the board, any board member discussion or comments that you'd like to make before we adjourn for tonight? If there should be none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion has been properly made by Ms. Blackshear. I have a second.
Second.
Motion has been properly second by Vice Chair, Mr. Isaiah Rouse. Is there any discussion? If there should be no discussion, I'll know you by saying aye, raising your right hand if you approve this motion. No opposes. That motion carries unanimously. Good night.